I'm now recording. This is Stephen Smith. The date is June 14th, 2018. This is the normally scheduled meeting of ITSE 2309, Collin College. And we have completed the assignment, or we have completed modules 3 and 4, which we did pretty quickly. We did not do an in-depth treatment of creating tables. That's going to come later. But we talked about how a table got created, and we talked about the role of the primary key in creating the tables. And so the primary key and the foreign key. So we have a primary key that is the parent table, and then we have a child table that holds a reference to that primary key. And so we can see that happen here. For example, I have a couple of tables. Let me, I didn't say if here. I really should have said if object ID. I really should. I'm getting sloppy here. If object ID then drop table children. And I should do that for both of them, but that's object ID. What's the problem with that? OBJE, OBJECT ID there. And same thing with for parents. This just saves you from having petulant error messages in it. So now all I have to do is just execute, and it'll drop them and recreate them. Okay, I have a table called parents. My table called parents has only 2 fields. It has a primary key, PID, and it has a name with it, so I can tell my fields apart. So I have a name, might be Joe and Tom and Bob, and they all have a PID. I have a table called children. A child has a child ID, CID, a C name, and the PID takes me back to the parent table. So I copy, how do you make a one-to-many relationship? The primary key of the one side, the parent. One parent has 0 or more children. The primary key of the one side gets copied over into the many side. It has to keep the same data type, and in my opinion, they don't always, but it should keep the same name. It does not have to keep the same name. Okay, questions? You there?
Yes.
Okay. I have the constraint, the primary key, and the foreign key constraint, foreign key. The PID in this table, this one in the children's table references the parents table. A pretty straightforward little set of 2 tables. Okay, I insert some values into the parents. 1, Joe, 2, Tom, 3, Hal. I insert some values into the children, and I've kept the names the same, Joe Jr. and Joe the Third, just to show that, so when you look at them, you can tell that this one belongs to Joe. The way it belongs to Joe is he gets Joe's primary key in the PID field. So the child A, Joe Jr., belongs to Joe. Child C, Joe the Third, also belongs to Joe. Why? Because the primary key matches the foreign key. Questions? Okay, now I'm going to do a select statement here. And I'm going to select everything from both tables. Now, when I select the PID, remember the PID is going to be named the same in both tables. So if I want to select the PID, I'm going to have to say which table I want it from. So I want the PID from the parents table. And I'm saying name it PK, pname. Then select the CID, CNAME, and the children's table PID. Now notice I'm selecting from two tables. There's the important point. That's what we're picking up that's new in this particular module. We're selecting from more than one table. And it doesn't really make any sense to select from more than one table unless those tables are related. And they are related through a foreign key primary key. If I execute this, I'm going to say execute. If I can bring this up. Wish I had an easy way to do that. Copy with headers. I'm going to walk over to Excel. This is something that's handy to do. I can paste from my spreadsheet easily into Excel. That lets me make it easier to see. Now, I selected the PID from the parents table as I put PK on that. The PID from the child table, I put FK on that. The rest of them have their same name. Now, notice what happened here. I have, for the primary key, I have 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Now, it usually happens that way. It does it that way. Notice with the child ID, the CID, I get A, B, 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 C, C, C. So this is row 1, row 1, row 1. So row 1 is paired with A, row 1 is paired with B, row 1 is paired with C. 2 is the same, 2 with B, 2 with C. 3 is A, 3B, and 3C. So what did it do? When I said from parents, comma, children, what it did, it put those two tables together every possible way it could make a row out of them. Every possible row it could make. Remember, I had 3 rows in parents and 3 rows in children. So there's the 3 rows that I had in parents. Then there they are again. And there they are again. Here is 1 row from children duplicated 3 times. Another row from children. And another row. So it made every possible let's see, permutation, combination. It made every possible combination of those two. So if I had 3 and 3, how many rows did I get in the output? 9. Well, what if I'd have had 5 rows in parents and 4 rows in children? What would I have gotten? 4 times 5, 20. Questions?
Okay, the first row that comes from, they are combining, merging them together.
Yeah, it's taking every row from the parents table and associating it with every row from the child table. So it takes the first row, associates with all 3 rows of the child table. Second row of parents associates it with all 3 rows of the, or whatever. It doesn't have to do it in that order. I guess that takes the row of parents and associates it there, associates it, and associates. It doesn't matter what order they're in. You can, I didn't put an order by clause on it. Had I put an order by, I would have seen it ordered thus. So this one is ordered by the CID. Had I ordered by this column, would have been fine. then I would have seen 1, 1, 1, 2, 2, 2, 3, 3, 3, and the rest of them would have still been the same row. So when I do this, I get it in every possible row that I can make. But which rows am I interested in? Well, Joe is the parent of Joe Jr. There's a row I'm interested in. But wait a minute, am I interested in this one?
No.
Why not?
Because the IDs are foreign key and primary keys are different.
The foreign key and the primary key are different. Big point. Here's another one I'm interested in. That one matches. And finally, this one matches. I only have 3 that match. The rest of them don't match. So I'm going to perturb my select. Okay. Now, what I do with this usually, since I'm going to be writing, since I'm going to have to qualify these fields, because when PID and PID, when the names are the same and they're in different tables, I'm going to have to use the table name. So I could type parents each time. I could say parents, like I did up here. I said parents.pid. But the easiest thing to do is to alias the table name like that, from parents as P, children as C. Now I've given them a short name. This is just for typing. I don't have to type as much. I have to use the alias up here on the select line. I cannot use this term parents anymore. He's been renamed. So I will say p.pid, but that's okay because I don't like typing anyway. Down here, c.pid, where the parent primary key equals the child foreign key. So when I run this one,
okay.
I'm only going to get the parents-child relation. So Joe, Joe Jr., Tom, Tom Jr., Joe, Joe the third. So only in these, and this goes with an order by. I can do an order by any way I want to see it. It happens to be ordering it by the child ID by default, but that's okay. I don't know that that's going to happen. It does in this case. Okay. Questions? A couple of things to do. What happened to Hal? Wait a minute. We got this guy. We got old Hal over here. What about Hal? Parent ID number 3. What became of him in this?
He doesn't have children.
He doesn't have any children. And that is one of the properties of an inner, this is the inner join. And one of the properties of the inner join is that if you don't have any children, you do not show up in the output. That is just one of the properties of this inner join. There's another one that will get the non-associated rows. That's called the outer join, but that's the next lecture. Okay. Back to this guy. This is here we have the inner join. Let me see if I can get him all on the, okay, select whatever you want to select from either table. I can select from either of these tables. And what is it? Who? Topsy. Go ahead. That's fine. I'm sorry, a little distraction there. Okay, so if I'm selecting a parent table and a child table, I can select any field from these two tables. And why stop at two tables? I can join 3 or 4 or 5 tables. Is not unusual. The only restriction on them that is they have to have 2 fields that are related. It makes no sense to join the IQ of the parent table to the shoe size of the child's table. That just makes no sense at all. So before a join makes any sense, they have to have the same data. There has to be some relationship. And we get that relationship is almost always a foreign key, primary key. It just doesn't make any sense to join a table on anything except a foreign key, primary key. It doesn't have to be an official foreign key, primary key, but there has to be some relationship. Are you with me? Okay, this is the old syntax. This is called the implicit join. So this is the it's called an implicit syntax. And for a long time, this is all we had. This is the way we did table joins. And I'm going to explain later why we changed it. This works just fine. In my opinion, it's more intuitive actually than the other one, but we use a newer syntax. So unless I say explicitly, I want the old implicit join syntax, I want the new one. Here's the modern syntax. The select row is the same from parents as P, and we use the word inner join between them instead of a comma, and then after that the where condition is on, turns into an on. In this I still have a where, so I still have the where clause, I still have the order by clause, so I can say where, but what happened is that this link of the primary key, foreign key, came out of the where statement. Up here it was in the where. It came out in the modern syntax, it comes out of the where, and from parents inner join children as the on, so the link comes up here, and it's exactly the same thing, it's just a different syntax. Questions?
Okay. Now, from the 2 tables that we said, if we change their order, will it make any difference?
No. It might make some difference as to how it got sorted if you didn't put an order by. But if you put an order by on it, it will make no difference at all.
Okay.
Yeah, that's one of the properties of one of the other properties of an inner join is that the order of the tables is irrelevant in an inner join. We're going to see one in a minute, or in our next part of this assignment that's in this chapter. So we got the inner join and the outer join in this chapter. In the outer join, that the order of the tables will make a difference. In the inner join, it does not. Okay. Let me see what I've got on. Okay. So joining tables, this is still a select from where. Introduction to the joins. This is essentially the same thing as my example. I just I I wrote the same same parent child. I just wrote it a little bit differently, and I'm doing exactly the same thing. Parent as P, child as C, and I'm showing exactly the same thing. I'm getting 9 rows. I get 3 by 3. The next one. And my PowerPoint slides. I'm not a big user of PowerPoint. Okay. Let's see. The previous page looks like I have got an extra page in between them. Select invoice number. I want to see vendors and invoices together. So in this one, I want to see vendors and invoices. So every vendor with their invoices. Now, how are they related? And this is where it sometimes becomes interesting. Let me show you a Object Explorer. In the Object Explorer, I'm going to start from the beginning. Open your Object Explorer, and when you do that, one of your options that you have is under Databases. No, not under Databases. Where is it? No, databases. Okay. Oh yeah, it's under there. Under the databases. As I drop it down under AP is where I'm working right now. One of my options is I can look at database diagrams. Now, we haven't really talked about this yet, but I'm going to put in, this is a handy thing for a graphical user interface. I'm going to say a new database diagram. Now, if you try to do this first, it'll say something like, you haven't loaded something, just say yes, go ahead and load it. Okay, I'm interested in the vendors and the invoices. Now, this shows me a link between them. By the way, if I click on this link and I delete it, it's deleted, so don't do that. I can drop it in the SQL also. So I have the ability to create foreign keys and primary keys in this diagram also. And that's the way you probably did it in your Access class, but we're not going to do it because we're doing it here in SQL. But this shows me that what I have created is the vendor ID. I see the little key icon there, relates to the vendor ID in invoices. Okay. So if I want to, we'll just copy this and save us some trouble. By the way, you can switch the database you're using. Not like that, though. Now I've changed my database.
You have to drop the other one?
No, I don't have to do anything with it. If I just say use a different one, it's not. I'm now in AP, so I can stay. For here, I stay using Scratch until I change it. Now I've just changed it, so it's something. I'm not going to drop anything. This says select invoice number, vendor name, invoices as I, vendors as V, where the vendor ID of the invoices table equals the vendor ID of the vendors table. A lot of the times most of the time, I guess I would put the primary key first. So the primary key is in the V table, and vendor ID, the child is the invoice table. If I ran this, I'm going to see, Well, I do have to execute this first. So I execute that once, and now I'm able just to highlight a piece of it. And I don't think I'm going to bother putting this one over into, I have 113 rows, and I see that IBM has 2 invoices. Blue Cross has 3. Pacific Bell has a bunch of them. Mallory Lithographic. These aren't necessarily in order. Zalka Design. So I'm not guaranteed that there isn't another Zalka Design somewhere else. UPS has a bunch. Federal Express. Anyway, so but the only those that have invoices, only those vendors that have invoices are shown. Meaning I should have as many vendors, as many rows as I have invoices. Because if a vendor does not have any invoices, he won't show. The other thing that this won't show is if I'm allowing orphans. Remember, an orphan is a invoice that has no associated vendor, that just has a null vendor ID. So if I go back to my diagram, what if the vendor ID over here in invoices were null? There's nothing stopping it from being, from a database perspective. That would be an orphan, an invoice with no associated vendor. An orphan is legal as far as the database is concerned. Now, it might not be legal in maybe you don't want an invoice that doesn't have a vendor. But as far as the database goes, database doesn't care. Now, if I were to write this, from invoices as I, enter join vendors as V, the where. On this one, I usually do tab over as part of the same line on. This is going to give, these 2 queries are exactly the same. So this query that begins on my line 61 and this one on line 65 is going to give me the same 113 rows. If I execute him, I get the same 113 rows. We could have a where. I get to have a where in here if I want it. Where what? Vendor state. Go ahead.
Isn't that where replaced by on?
Just say that again.
Okay, now I understand. Okay, go ahead.
Let me see. I think I put one in there from Texas. And he needs to be in single quotes. So executing this. I have a vendor named Ingram, which is located in Texas, and he has 2 invoices. Where? I can also put an order by in there. So if I want to see only the vendors that are in California. Okay. And it is also subject to an order by. Order by what? Invoice number. I do not have to order by something that is in the select line. I do not have to have everything in the where clause in the select line. Just because I print it, just because it's part of the output, does not mean it may or may not appear in the where or the order by. They really have nothing much to do with each other. So I'm only going to see, I guess I'll put vendor state up here, just to show that I'm only seeing ones from California. And here I see everything's in California. I'm ordering by the invoice number. And what do I have? I have 39 invoices coming from California. Questions?
No. Oh. So this is whole thing is one statement, because there is a semicolon at the very end.
Yes, indeed. It is one statement. When I say that you should not have a blank line inside of a statement, I mean something like that. Many platforms, SQL Server doesn't care. Between them, put as many blank lines as you want. But yes, this is one statement. By the way, this window represents an SQL program. And I have full programming ability in this window. So this is this is a piece of an SQL program. It is a standalone program, so I can run this by itself, or I can just run the whole thing if I want to just execute the whole deal. Notice that I got all of them executed there. And this is what I typically do with your code when I have a whole bunch of things from you or from turned in. I'll just set it up, open it, double check that that our database names are the same, and I'll just execute the whole thing. And then I look down here and see how many rows did I get. And if I get the number of rows I'm expecting, everything's fine. By the way, I tell you how many rows I got. Don't put too much faith in that, because I tend to change the data from semester to semester, and I don't always go back and rerun all of my queries. So if I've changed the data, then the numbers what I'm expecting, I'll run it on my system, and then if I don't get the correct number, I'm going to go and look at what you did, and sometimes there's different ways to interpret the same question. Let me go back and see if I've done everything. Golly, we got through with that one quickly. Next. A table can be joined with itself. This is called a self join. It's an inner join. And using the returned all vendor name. Okay, that's it. Okay, the textbook's example to find vendor names that share a city in common with other vendors. That's done sometimes, but we most often find it in a table where the foreign key references the same table, something like this. So in the employees table, I have an employee ID. That's the primary key. You okay with that?
Yeah. Okay.
And I have some other fields. I have your department ID and your phone number and all that kind of stuff. But I have a supervisor's ID. Now the supervisor is also an employee. Supervisor's ID references the EID in this table. So the supervisor's ID is the ID of my supervisor. So it's a different row. So ideally, they wouldn't be the same. So I select SID is the supervisor's ID, EID as I say lowly peon. I don't know why I said that, but from employees as E1, inner join employees as E2. Now, notice that the table is being joined to itself. This is going to give me the supervisors and people that they supervise, a list of the pairs. Questions?
I didn't quite follow all the way to the end. How is it joining by itself?
Well, I guess we could set it up. Let's go back to Scratch. Let's see if I don't know whether I have an employees table or not. See if that drops. Okay. Let's call this now this works. It's just a little bit sloppy is all. It's kind of playing fast and loose with it. There's some other fields in here. I'm not going to bother with them. Hate these little bitty keyboards. Also, references. I think that'll. Okay, so this, notice I did not name my constraints, but the SID is my supervisor ID. It references this table, the one I'm in now. So if I insert, I cannot insert a let's see, EID of 1. Now the EID 1 is I guess he's like the owner or the chairman of the board. He cannot have,
supervisor.
yeah. He doesn't have a supervisor. Okay, so for the guy that's employee ID 1, I cannot put a supervisor for him because in order to do that, the supervisor would be there. I cannot do this. I cannot go 1, 1. That's not going to work because he's not in the table originally. So if I try to do this, it's going to fail. No, I probably didn't create it yet. Create the table. Notice that it does not require me to have a semicolon, but I'm going to put semicolons. Now this insert is going to fail. No, it didn't. Well, that's unusual. Sometimes they throw me curves like that. I expected it to fail because this is a foreign key, and okay. Let me put a few more in there.
It will be 2 and 1.
What's that?
It will be 2 and 1. This would be 2.
Yeah, this is 2, and these all have to be different. 3 and 4. I've got 5. So 1 supervises himself. Now this one is allowed to be null. It's okay for this to be null. I expected this to fail, but it did not. Let's see. So employee number 2 is supervised by employee number 1. Employee 3 is supervised by 2. And 2 supervises 4, and 4 supervises 5. Okay, so if I wanted these pairs out of it, execute. So we got 5 rows in there. And so now I want to see these guys paired. I'm going to say select everything. I don't do star very much. Star says select everything from employees as E1. Now I have to give them names. So I have to alias them. On E1. What did I name that? EID and SID. Okay, so this is going to give me the pairs. I think I'm going to have 4 values. So let's say that, so E1 is the employee. So I'm going to say E1 dot E ID E2 dot afraid I'd just get too many values up there to tell what I was looking at. Okay, so now when I execute this, I'm going to see my pairs. So what is it? 1 supervises him or herself. And let's just, I probably would make that null. 2 is supervised by 1. 3 is supervised by 2. 4 is supervised by 2. 5 is supervised by 4. Now executing this, I see these relationships. I see, let's see, 1, 1, 1, 1, 2, 2, 2, 2. What's going wrong here? Something went wrong with this. I should see an EID of 5 in here. I see 4 and 2, but I don't see 1 supervises 1. Then I'm seeing 1, 1 again. E1 SID equals E2 SID. Something is not working right on this one, and because I'm saying 1, 1, 1, 1, 2, 2, 2, 2, 4, 4. That's not right. E1. Okay, there I'm seeing the correct data, but I'm not sure exactly why. I can explain why that didn't work as well as I was expecting it to. E2, I'm taking them both from this one, from one table. And that's the table where the supervisor's ID. So I want supervisors and employees. So I have to take the supervisor and the employee from E2. Anyway, I can join a table with itself.
Okay.
You don't do this a whole lot.
Okay.
You'll do it. I want to see pairs of vendors that live in the same city. Okay, so I want to see vendors if 2 vendors live in the same city. Now that's going to be kind of tricky because if I live in Denton, Texas, then I will live in the same city as I do. So I'm going to see myself twice in there. So, show me pairs of people that live in the same city. Well, I'm going to see Stephen Smith, because I live in the same city as I live in. And that's a tricky one to suppress. But I don't know whether I talk about that or not. Let's look at one of the exercises. We'll do one of them. We have plenty of time. Exercises. Joining day. This one has, excuse me. This one has the assignment on this one is worth 20 points, and then the outer join has another one. Without looking back at the exercise in the module, we've done this one, right? A SQL select that will return vendor name and invoice numbers, and we did that. Then order them by invoice number. I say you have 114 rows. Seems like that was 113. SQL select statement that will return vendor name from the vendors table, invoice number, invoice date, and the balance due. And have we done the balance due yet? You're going to do this one a lot, so we may as well get used to this. So, what's that?
Last time you showed how you do that.
Okay. So this one is coming. This one we want vendor name, invoice number, invoice date. So we can do this one. Select. What was that? Vendor name, invoice number, and date. Sometimes if I'm going to go off the edge, I'll come in under it. Invoice total minus Okay, I got my fields that I want. The reason they're showing is red. So don't worry too much if you see a red squiggly line. It doesn't always mean much. So this one is coming from two tables. This comes from vendors. I usually put the primary key first, but you don't have to. And let's see, that should, I have to go back to my use. And I got 113 rows. So here we have the derived field. In other words, just make a note of this. This one right there, that balance due, is going to pop up over and over and over again. You may as well just find out, figure out how to write that fairly easily. And I have vendors joined with invoices. We're going to be joining those two tables a lot because that's a fairly easy one to follow. If I wanted to find out about other primary keys, by the way, I could go to my desktop diagram and, for example, I could add the table. I want to add terms. And I can find out what the terms has to do with it. So the terms ID matches the terms ID here. Unlike Access, it doesn't always show exactly to which field it matches, but it's pretty good. So that lets me see some things. So I have other relationships here besides vendors and invoices. All of these tables are interrelated. Questions?
Now, are we supposed to, am I going to be responsible for this diagram?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Are you going to be responsible for the diagrams?
No, I'm not going to do very much at all with that Object Explorer, except to mention how you can use it to get the information that you need from the table.
Okay. I have another unrelated question, but it is very important. You showed us the first day how you set up that line number.
Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm just get ready to come back on. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording as no, I don't think I will. I think I'm just going to go on. I'm going to take a short break here. I'm going to run to the bathroom, and then I'm coming back. So this will be the end of the lecture. That's we've had right about an hour on it.
Okay.
The next lecture, we will continue in this module, and we will do the outer join. In the outer join, we're going to get all rows from one table or the other. So there's a difference. Inner join only gives me rows that participate in the relationship. If they don't participate in the relationship, it does not give me parents with no children. It does not show me orphans. I cannot use it to find a child with an invalid parent either. So sometimes I will have those. Not supposed to, but I will. Okay, I think I've put a few of those in into our data just so we have some errors to find in it. Let's see. So I'm going to end there and I'll run quickly in, and I'll be back in a.
Before you go, I have to go pick up my daughter. I'll have to end here too. So,
Okay. So you want to come back later?
I'll have to pick up my daughter from the airport.
Okay. I mean, like when? Like how long?
Oh, it'll take probably an hour or hour and a half.
Okay. It's about 7 o'clock now. You want to come back at 8 or 8:30? Or I can show you how to do the line numbers.
Yes, please.
Okay, I'll show you quickly how to do the line numbers. You go to Tools. Do you see Tools?
From the Object Explorer, right?
Yeah, from the Server Management Studio.
Okay.
Tools. It's Object Explorer is below this. Tools. Okay. Drop it down. Go down to Options, very bottom. Options. Okay. Go to Text Editor. It's down towards the bottom, and he has a drop-down window, little drop-down screen there.
Yeah.
Text Editor. Under Text Editor, go down to All Languages.
Okay.
All Languages has a drop-down, and you want General. It'll come up as General. And over here, you have a checkbox that says Line Numbers. Okay. So it is Tools. Option? Text Editor, Tool Option, yes, Tools, Options, Text Editor, All Languages. General, and there's your line numbers right there. Click it.
Where do I go to listen to this recorded? I couldn't find it. Where do I go?
Okay. You go into your Canvas.
Okay.
Into your modules.
Okay.
Scroll to the bottom under recorded lectures, installation instructions. This is the one last time. So for example, this one has the lecture and it has the lab. And so there's two recordings on 612. Okay. So today there will be one for 614.
Okay. I think I'm okay now. So we'll join you next Tuesday again.
Okay. Well, I'm going to stop the recording then.
And
ending the recording now.